Hello and welcome to the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff Simone. He is the man in charge. The man is soon to be less large. Sean Dooley.
I'm on a diet now, eating my gummy bears. Ooh, these are diet gummy bears.
Gummy bears are the best. It is a tradition here at the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast to have gummy bears prior to and after recording. And we are enjoying them. Toot sweet. Sean, how you doing?
Good. Long week, but busy week. Good week.
Yeah, we got a lot going on, for sure.
Yes, we do.
And I think we should just dive right in. This week...
That's what the folks at home are waiting for.
Yeah, well, why not cut right to it? So this week on Beacon Hill, there was a very important piece of legislation on the floor of the Senate and House regarding police reform.
Right.
And we're going to have a video from Senator and Rep that were on Greater Boston this week, kind of breaking it down. We're going to get your thoughts and get some of the background, get some of the details that weren't talked about. But before we start the video, let's talk about the process, because one thing that is not really well known or hasn't been talked about or briefly mentioned maybe in an article in the Globe is how this process went about, because I heard that it came out of committee, this bill, and
the
conference committee, and then what happened? So can you break down the timeline?
Let me back up really quick so people that don't understand what conference committee is.
Okay.
So basically what happens is when a bill is passed in the House and another version is passed in the Senate, if they're not the same, it basically goes to what's called a conference committee. So instead of going back and forth to try to hammer things out, they're like, let's do a little private committee and they can hammer it out. So there's three senators, 3 reps. Out of that makeup is 2 of the majority party, 1 of the minority party.
Okay.
On both sides.
All right.
So basically 4 Democrats, 2 Republicans.
Okay.
In this particular process, the Republicans were pretty much omitted. They were told what was going on.
Well, how do you get omitted if you're supposed to have 4 and 2?
Because they can. Because this is the problem with supermajority. They have created. Same with the housing, bill earlier this summer. They literally did not tell Peter Durant, who was the housing rep on the housing committee, the Republican. They did not include him in any of the discussions. They just said, "We'll let you know when it's done."
Wait. This is important because I'm a big fan of government transparency here. Is it public knowledge of what Republican rep was or Republican senator was supposed to be in the conference committee with?
So Timmy Whalen.
Okay.
My cousin.
Yep.
Like 5th cousin back from Ireland.
All right.
30 years, state police trooper.
Okay.
Representative from Brewster.
Knowledgeable about law enforcement.
Great guy. Not a crazy by any stretch of the imagination, just solid individual. He was the House rep.
Okay.
House Republican. And then Bruce Tarr,
right,
the minority leader in the Senate.
Were they physically excluded from the conference committee room or the committee taking place, or what? How is it? How does it take shape?
So, normally there's meetings in rooms and things like that, but it's COVID. So I don't know. I have not been on a conference committee since COVID has taken place.
Okay.
But my guess would be the 2 chairs.
They met, worked it out,
whether over the phone or whatever. The other 2 Democrats were just like, go along to get along. Mm-hmm. And I'm just guessing.
All right. So speculation.
Yeah,
okay. We can confirm
and
later.
Then, they would, and I haven't talked to Bruce about it, but I know I talked to Timmy about it, and he's like, they kept us in the loop, and we're doing this, and what do you think about that? But they're not in the room. Typically
it's more like we'll let you know.
Conference committees I've sat on before, literally at a big table like this.
Yep.
3 on this side, 3 on that side.
Yep.
And we go through. So everything that's in the bill is exactly the same in the House and the Senate, off the table.
Okay.
Anything different, you're like, all right, we have this amendment. You don't have this amendment. Let's figure it out. Work.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's a good amendment. Fine. Keep it in. or no, we don't want it, or we want to amend it. Back and forth, back and forth. And then you get the final bill. And then everyone reads it and, oh, I agree. And you sign your name.
Okay.
Since, when everybody signs their name, you have to at least have 4. You have to have a majority.
Yep.
And so not only were the Republicans not included, they didn't sign the jacket to submit it to the clerk because they never were allowed to see it. So the conference committee
Government transparency
at its finest. So they actually submitted the jacket, submitted the bill to the clerk's office, and then I don't know, half hour later, 5:45 in the evening, 5:40 in the evening, gets put on the website. That's the first time the two Republican members of the conference committee saw the bill.
Okay. So obviously there's problems. Obviously there's problems there. Yeah. So there's obviously problems there. So 5:45 in the evening it comes out. When does the vote take place for the bill? I mean, was this Monday or Tuesday?
So this was on Monday night.
Monday night. Monday evening, 5:45. Right. Bill comes out. When's the vote?
Like I got to email it, or I got a phone call around 5:50, and they're like, what's going on? Why is this coming out? It was a couple, one of my police officer buddies, and I'm like, nothing's going on with this. I don't even know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, we were just told this, and I'm like, so I just got out of a meeting, and I'm like, I don't know. Let me check my email. Holy shit!
Yeah,
it's actually coming out, and we were told on Friday that it was going to be only informal sessions this week. So there was probably some people that booked a vacation or booked a whatever. And then immediately before it or after it, somewhere around after 5 p.m., we got a notification like, oh, by the way, we're in session tomorrow starting at 3:00. Roll calls beginning at 3.
So roll call for the vote at 3 p.m. the following day.
Yeah, so less than 24 hours.
For the people at home, how long is this bill?
129 pages.
129 pages to be read by each and every legislator within less than 24 hours, and then the vote begins.
And if I wouldn't have been called on this, I was in meetings. I was actually driving home, got called about it. Got home.
You wouldn't even have known.
Maybe I would have looked at my emails that night, and gone through them. Maybe I wouldn't have. Yeah, I checked probably around 4:00. Nothing usually pressing coming in after 5. And not only is it 129 pages, but it's not like it's 129 pages like you're reading a novel.
Well, this is what I was just about to say. This isn't a Harry Potter book where you're like, oh, this is enjoyable, and you can actually stay up and enjoy it. But even if you read through 129 pages of this legislation, you actually have to make notes and think about the different aspects of it, and
you have to go have to go back to Mass General Laws because line 527 of the bill says strike word no from line 327 section 442. So you're all that's all it says.
Oh, and so you have to go back and you have to go reference it. Yeah,
section 42 3A B C and find it and be like, all right, so we're striking out the word no. So then, okay, that's what this means.
Yeah.
It's not like strike out word, no, and it will now read X, because you have to be able to put it in context. You have to, all of these things. So it's not, even if could I read 120, 9 pages? Yeah, of course I could. But it's not like reading. You're not reading it as something that's written.
Let's preface this because this is broken. This is broken. It's not a question if you could.
Super majority.
It's not a question of if you could. Sure, you could.
Right.
It's a question of if you should.
Right.
And why you should, because this needs to stop.
And no urgency. I mean, if we've come out Monday night. We didn't have session scheduled. Why not schedule session for Wednesday? Give us a day and a half to read it.
Sure.
Give us a little time to call our chief of police and be like, hey, have you had a chance to read this? What do you think? What does this mean to you? I'm not an expert on policing. I rely on people who are in the field on both sides and say, hey, and I call the DA and be like, what do you think about this? Or I called one of my, a victim witness advocate, or different people. I like to try to get different experts on something that is this significant.
Yeah. So aside from the details, which we're going to get to in a moment, I want to just maybe wrap up this portion about talking about it. The reason we created this podcast and you wanted to move this forward was to offer a counterpoint and be a counterweight as chairman of the Republican Party, to have some influence, to be able to shed some light, some sunlight on these ridiculous processes.
Right.
To not only just gain legislative seats in both bodies in our legislature, but to actually have some power.
Right.
And I think it's critically important that as Republicans, and I would even say there are some commie progressives that are tired of this nonsense, where these bills are just written in secret.
Yep.
They're dropped on the last minute, barely read, then voted on, no debate. I'm assuming no amendments.
Well, you can't have an amendment on a conference committee.
Okay, so no amendments coming out of a conference committee, but there should be debate. How much debate took place on this bill?
Let's see, there was 3 speakers in favor of it, 2 against. That's it. So
the cradle of democracy?
Right, maybe a total of a half hour tops.
Wow.
And on a 129-page bill, that's a sweeping piece of legislation.
Yeah, and that's the other part. Right, we're going to get into the details. This
it's 129 pages.
This affects the life of every citizen in the Commonwealth, and it is critically important. And we need leadership in the Republican Party to represent us and the citizens, to be a pushback and a counterweight that is not taking place, and actually get better things to happen.
To put it into perspective, Governor Baker created his police reform bill after George Floyd, worked with the police unions, worked with the Black and Latino caucus, worked with different groups, and make sure everyone had their say. They came up with a bill that everyone agreed on. 17 pages.
Who knew about this? Was this public?
It was public. But they
semi-public.
It was. I mean, it was in the paper, but it quickly got hijacked by the progressives in the Senate. They created their own bill based on that. So they took a 17-page bill and tweaked it a little bit and made it 129 pages.
Tweaked it.
I think it was 127 pages is what it came out of the Senate as.
Wow.
And then came to the House, and then the battles ensued. But Baker was a good first step.
So Baker actually worked with the police chiefs
and with the Black and Latino caucus and
wow, okay,
the Black community.
Great.
They were all 100% in agreement. This could have been done in June.
Wow.
And that would have done, not saying it was perfect, but everybody was on board with it.
Well, nothing ever is perfect, but if a lot of people are on board with it, yeah.
You can't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
And that's what, but it didn't have the qualified immunity. It didn't have it didn't have layer upon layer upon layer of the nonsense that was baked into this other bill. And also, instead of having 67 people voting against it in the House, 13 above what's needed to sustain a veto. So those playing at home, that's 36 Democrats voted with the 31 Republicans.
Right.
Which is significant in its own right, because DeLeo doesn't usually allow that to happen.
Well, look, this is an important piece.
Very important piece. I mean, the police unions are against it. The fire unions against it. Most of the unions are against it. Police chiefs are against it. Layer upon layer. I mean, even Maura Healey wrote back and said, "I don't know about these lines here. I don't." And
we'll hear from her a little bit later.
Oh, do we hear from her? Oh,
yeah. But I'll save that till the end.
But the reality is that, like you said, the system's broken. This is all done behind closed doors. It's not transparent. The public doesn't have an ability, especially in COVID world, to have testimony and hearings and things along these lines. Kind of like what our country is made on.
Yeah.
All that's gone. Do it behind closed doors. And then I think we ended up doing it around 6:00 at night on Tuesday night. We bang through a vote. Senate quickly bangs through a vote. Comes back. We bang through it again. Then it goes over to the governor's desk.
Terrible. All right. Before we get into what the governor may or may not do, I don't know. Do we see any update on that as of recording?
As of right now?
As of recording?
None. But
okay.
I have my suggestions for Charlie because I know he's watching.
Well, we'll get this episode
watching
up
at home,
real
and
quick.
I'll tell him what he should be doing because
we'll get this episode up quick. But I used to say something like unbelievable. But you know what? I've tried to get that because it's completely believable.
Yep. Nope. This is what happens in Massachusetts.
If this is what happens, if you see something in politics that you don't like, and you say, that's unbelievable, or you're unbelievable. No, it's perfectly believable now. We've all seen it enough.
Right.
So now it's time to get to the change. All right. Here we are. This is from earlier in the week. This is Greater Boston. We're going to let it run for a little bit. Sean, you let me know when you want me to pause, and we can interrupt accordingly.
Mystery Science Theater 3000.
More than 6 years after the police killings of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, 7 months since Minneapolis police
Rowdy's
officer
looking
Derek
old,
Chauvin.
It's the hair. He's got a mad scientist. He's got
but look at him, like his skin. I mean, I'm like, wow.
Bags under his eyes.
Wow, man. I guess we're all getting older, but geez. All right, sorry, Jim.
When you're on that show, his chair, where I am, we'll dish it right back. I'm sure.
And he's also shiny.
Yeah,
he needs
he'll be interrupting us constantly. It's definitely the COVID non-studio.
Is it? You think that's what it is?
It's probably like at home, like with the light and the tight zoom.
Okay.
Killed George Floyd.
No makeup.
And with the deaths of far too many other black men and women before, between, and since, state lawmakers are finally making progress on a police reform bill in our state. After 4 long months of closed-door negotiations over separate plans each chamber passed over the summer, the Senate signed off late this afternoon.
Did they negotiate on, when he refers to that, are they the 4 months after Baker's proposal? Is that what he's talking about?
No, it's 4 months after the House and Senate passed their version.
Oh, really? This has been in that conference committee for 4 months?
Correct.
Wow.
And it's always fun. The conference committee, one of the very first vote the conference committee usually takes, and the couple of conference committees that I've been on, this is what they've done. The press is there. Their first motion is to close to all outside viewing.
Oh, right. I've seen, this is even more lack of transparency.
And I always, myself and most of the Republicans that I've ever been on with vote against it. We lose 4-2 to close it. And it's like, and the press never reports on the fact that they're there. They are literally being thrown out of the room.
Yep.
Because we don't want you to hear what we're saying and see how the sausage is made.
That's insane.
And our stellar press does not ever, I have never seen them actually comment on that.
There are a few intrepid reporters. One comes to mind, Mike Dehan of WGBH. He's a reporter he does radio stuff.
Is he GBH or BRU?
GBH.
Okay.
But he mentions it, and then, some of the alt weekly types mention it, the Dig Boston and all that stuff. But other than that, yeah. I mean, here's what my view on that. Debate on the floor of the chamber, press, eyeballs, absolutely. Committee rooms, conference committees, whatever that, no. Where you're working out more details of it, I don't think that, that's kind of, if sausage is made there, sometimes it's okay to have it behind that. But on the floor.
No. This is behind closed doors.
I know it shouldn't be.
But
that's
right. But I guess I'll disagree with you on that. I
you,
believe,
you think there should be transparency in the committee rooms?
Why not? What are we hiding? Why can we not report? We're negotiating and debating a bill. Just because it's 6 people instead of 160, that doesn't mean that it should be private.
I think the horse trading that might take place.
That's the Democratic argument.
Yeah.
That we can do a better job if we don't have to worry about the press watching us and any politicizing or any posturing.
I'm
anything
sympathetic.
like that.
I'm sympathetic to your point. I there's part of me that wants to agree. I'm just saying there is a reasonable case. I think there's cases on both sides. I don't, I would if gun to the head, I'd probably go, yeah, all right, more transparency. Let the press in the room of the committee. All right, we'll start it back
especially
up
in this particular case.
Yeah.
The press would be like, weird. 2 of the committee members, both the Republicans, aren't here because they weren't told about this meeting.
Right.
Ta-da.
That's a good. Maybe not conference committee, but the other parts. But all right, we'll keep going.
All right, we're going.
This taping, the House has yet to vote. The 129-page bill would create a 9-member commission responsible for licensing all law enforcement officers and overseeing misconduct investigations, even if the officer hasn't been formally charged with a crime. The commission would also have the power to pull an officer's license in several instances. And it would be made up of a combination of people from law enforcement backgrounds and civilians. In addition, the bill would ban chokeholds.
Only 3 law enforcement people. Just
This is one thing when I watched this originally to get some notes on this. It's 9,
but 3 are law enforcement.
3. I see. I would flip that
because
it should be the other way around, or at least 5-4. Law enforcement.
Why the hell am I not on the medical review board?
Are you a doctor? Then I'm not aware of that. I don't know.
No, but why don't we have a surgeon, a civilian on determining whether a surgeon did heart surgery correct? I'm like, that's not how I would have done it. I didn't go to medical school. I've never been in this situation. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But why don't I get to determine that doctor's guilt and whether we pull his license? That's what we're doing here. We're having people, 6 of the 9, they have absolutely no experience, they literally could be just plucked out of the sky.
Anybody. And they'd be politically
and obviously they're politically motivated because they're political appointments.
Right.
Because they get paid money. So shocker. And so you got somebody's cousin who hates the police, whatever, it gets put on this, and votes take away their license on every single one.
Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, says 9 members with law enforcement backgrounds and civilians. So the 3 have law. Could they be civilians? Is in retired law enforcement? And is that no? Do you know what I'm saying?
I can't remember. I'll be honest with you.
But active law enforcement. So
three appointed by law enforcement. On the on the original bill, they couldn't have any. I honestly don't remember if when it came back from conference committee, like on the one that we passed in the House originally, if you worked as a janitor in high school at a police station and were paid by the police department, technically you were not allowed to be on the.
Really? Not allowed.
Not allowed.
So it excluded if you had a connection to law enforcement.
The 6 civilians wouldn't have any availability.
All right. So this commission is everything, though. This commission is like because it'll get it more into the details.
But I honestly don't remember. Yeah. Again, I tried to read as much as the bill I could.
Yeah.
In the 5 hours that I had, and getting phone calls and emails and texts on other issues at the same time.
So if we're giving advice here, in my opinion, the composition of that commission should be inverted. 6-3 law enforcement, 6 law enforcement, 3 civilian. With definitely. It's right off the bat.
We have this thing. I forget where it came from. I heard something like jury of your peers.
Yeah.
Is that like a new concept?
The founding of our republic.
That's what it was. Yeah. So this has to be not a jury of your peers.
So there's no commission right now that exists?
No. This is something they're making.
Okay.
Of course, there's no funding mechanism for this, but they have an executive director and they have office space and they're going to have all these other sort of things. So I'm sure that'll be cheap, but
What? All right.
but we've got plenty of money.
Aside from this, so maybe we're working backwards here. The composition of the commission, because we're accepting that the commission would exist. Do you think that a commission should exist that oversees misconduct violations? Because what is there now?
Right now there's nothing.
Okay.
You know, there should be a certification commission. That was in Governor Baker's original bill.
Okay.
That because I think there's only 4 or 5 states in the country that don't have a police certification. You have to be licensed. I mean, I forget who it was. I think it was Representative Russell Holmes said something about like, the fact that you're, person who cuts your hair or does your pedicure has to have more licensing and certifications.
And that's a good point.
Than a police officer and has a licensing board.
Well, that's even to get their foot in the door. I think for what we're talking, why this all is, we're talking about this now, and this has all been brought up, is because of misconduct and allegations and things that need to be adjudicated, and who adjudicates them, right?
Exactly.
So I think maybe I haven't heard enough proposals, but the idea of a commission, and I think it should be 6:3 law enforcement to civilian ratio, somebody who says, that guy's a bad cop.
Right.
Or, you know what? No, they were okay in this situation.
Right.
Whatever the case may be. But yes, there should be some mechanism in place
100%.
that gets bad cops off the force.
And we all agreed about that.
Okay. That's great.
I mean, Baker put that.
All right.
I think his bill came out around June 15th.
Yeah.
Because he had already been working on it. They already had 90% of it in place.
All right, let's keep going.
The use of tear gas, no-knock warrants, facial recognition technology.
Oh, can I just do the no-knock warrants?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is one of the things Maura Healey pushed back on it, because the no-knock warrants, it limits them based on a minor being in the home or a senior.
Okay.
So somehow, without knocking, you have a no-knock warrant, because a no-knock warrant is like when it's a dangerous situation. The guy is armed, dangerous, drug dealer, all these, whatever it is, and the cops are like, well, we can't do the hello, police.
Yeah.
And the guy shoots him and or escapes out the back. So sometimes, let's face it, they have to bang the door down, go in, flash bang.
Yep.
It's safer for the police. It's safer for the individual. Element of surprise, all that sort of stuff. Now, if you have a suspicion that there's going to be someone that's a minor, all right. So
there's a decent likelihood.
I'm a drug dealer and I've got a wife and some kids.
Yeah.
All right. Now I can't get a no-knock warrant, or I'm a drug dealer and I'm 65, or a bad guy that I'm a bank robber.
Yeah.
I'm a senior.
So who's it? So it would be the elimination of no-knock warrants.
It limits limited use, which means if you think that there might be a kid there, which is like, I'm a bad guy. I'm keeping kids there.
I'd want to hear more on this. I'd want to hear from cops on the streets who conduct no-knock warrant raids, have maybe been on some bad ones, other ones who say, I want to see some pros and cons on no-knock warrants, because I've seen some arguments against no-knock warrants, and I'm sympathetic to the concept behind it, because one, I mean, not for nothing, but if somebody kicks the door in of my house, let me just say, I'm a proud Second Amendment supporter, and we've heard about things like swatting.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you know what swatting is by any chance? So somebody makes a false, like really, it's dangerous stuff. It's a crime. If you make a false police report saying like somebody you have a grudge against, and you do that. That type of scenario, no knock warrant. We've actually seen this across the country.
But not so much in Massachusetts.
Okay,
and I also I also personally have faith in our judiciary and the the ability to go say, listen, have the DA go and say, all right, this is why we need a no-knock warrant. I think our judges in Massachusetts are more on the liberal side and aren't as willing to be like, yeah, I'll sign any freaking warrant. I think right now, especially given the sensitivity, I'm friends with a lot of judges, and they don't give out no-knock warrants without be like, all right, explain to me why you need a no-knock warrant. Well, this person has been, arrested 7 times for these criminal things. He's shot at police before. He's done this, blah, 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 blah. This is why we need a no-knock warrant. I'm
more concerned. I agree. I think that those circumstances where there's a dangerous individual.
Yep.
And you need the element of surprise, or they can't be tipped off ahead of time. But the cases and there's been a few across the country. Yes, there haven't been any in Massachusetts where they've simply got the wrong house.
Okay.
And in those types of situations, it's just like, if the concept of the no-knock warrant was more limited, I don't think those would have taken place. I mean, is that just, any type of arrest could have been bad, but like there was a shootout with a lawful gun owner who wasn't the target of the warrant.
I mean,
so
but put it this way. I mean,
whereas if they said hello,
I'm not defend. Okay.
Yeah.
But how often, if you say
it's
hello,
rare. It's rare.
But how often, if you say hello and you're trying to arrest a really, really bad guy, an MS-13 gang, gang house,
zero. Like,
you are going to have 5 dead cops.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, so I have no problem with it being, rare. I have no problem being, limited. I have a problem with, all right, so there's a 17-year-old in the house who may be also a gangbanger.
Yeah, right.
And now we can't get it because it just seems irrational. I think you should say, all right, the judge needs to hear if there's extenuating circumstances, what the family situation, everything that the district attorney and the police know. No problem. Let the judge decide. If the police say we need a no-knock warrant, judge says why. They say because X, Y, and Z, and he can look at it and be like, well, what about ABC? And they can go back and forth, and then the judge can decide as a neutral party, you know what? I think you're overzealous. No, you don't get a no-knock warrant.
Okay.
Serve a regular warrant.
I can get behind that. If that's the more, if we're gravitating more towards that process.
I mean, and that's the process currently in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I mean,
yeah,
and that's one of the things that frustrates me about a lot of these bills. They're like, oh, well, this happened in Minnesota, and therefore we need to protect us from here. I'm like, well, it didn't happen here. Or this no-knock warrant happened in Kentucky or Tennessee.
Our cops can be better. Our cops are better.
Again, we're not Kentucky or Tennessee. I'm like, we can pass all the laws we want. They're not going to affect Kentucky or Tennessee.
I think it's perfectly okay to say we have better law enforcement.
We have better law enforcement. We have better training. And can we be better? Of course we can.
Yeah.
More training is always better. More education is always better. More oversight, always better.
Yeah.
But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater from the standpoint of saying, all of a sudden because someone else somewhere that has nothing to do with Massachusetts did something wrong, that doesn't mean you as a police officer are bad.
Agreed. And I think my point to, about the, no-knock warrants and getting it wrong before was mainly to, one, just bring it up.
Right. That
it can happen, it can go wrong, where if the no-knock wasn't in place, it wouldn't have gone wrong. Like, it wouldn't have been a tragedy.
Right.
And I think, if the protocols that you're talking about are in place, which they are and they will continue to be,
correct,
that and are followed rigorously, which I imagine they are.
Yeah,
we're in the good spot and in the right direction.
Well, and I think all of it is subjective from the standpoint of you're gonna have a more conservative judge, you're gonna have a more liberal judge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that wild card in there because we have a human element in play in all of these. So
what's going on with tear gas is tear gas, but what's with facial recognition, limited use of facial recognition for what type of cameras?
So say for just different police cameras, as far as being able to say, all right, we've just determined that this is the bad guy based on this facial recognition software.
Okay. It would limit that use?
I don't get it. I think we're literally saying, well, that technology is too good. So let's, it could be making a mistake. I'm like, versus a sketch artist? I mean, I don't.
Facial recognition, I mean, if you think about the idea of it, and like, there's a lot of Big Brother stuff I'm not comfortable with at all, right. And they're doing it in China, and it's bad news. But if law enforcement is going to be using it, they're going to be using it not to catch people, catch criminals, right. that they're trying to catch. Yeah. Not to necessarily get you jaywalking across the street, facial recognition, then they come to arrest you at your house.
I don't understand why they're trying to limit facial recognition. I'll be honest with you.
All right. I'd love to hear an argument about that, or what the argument is.
Maybe for next week we can try to find out, and I'll call around to some of my colleagues who were supportive of this bill, and be like, all right, tell me about what you loved about the facial recognition. I'm happy to be as unbiased as I can and report what they're saying.
Yeah,
I have not heard an argument for it, but to be honest with you, and we have up one, the ban of use of chokeholds. So what a chokehold is headlock.
I think that's ridiculous. Ban use of chokeholds is insane.
Okay, and first of all, in Massachusetts, our police aren't taught chokeholds. It's already been eliminated for the past, per Timmy Whalen. So he's been in law enforcement for 30 years. He goes, it was gone before I was here. But right now, what it is, by banning the use of chokeholds, you don't pass go, you go directly to jail. You lose your certification.
Wait, if you do what?
If you do a chokehold.
Okay.
So you and I, you're a bad guy, I'm a cop. We get in a fight. I'm trying to arrest you. You swing, you grab my gun. We're wrestling around on the ground. Only way I can restrain you is put you in a headlock.
That's insane.
You could be freaking stabbing me.
Yeah.
But I've put you in a headlock. Therefore, I'm automatically lose my certification.
Yep. Look,
and I'm like, listen,
that's something.
You want to eliminate his chokehold? That he's, you're doing that as a restraining aspect. No problem.
Well, but even then, though, look, the people that say these things, I doubt many of them have even been in a fist fight before.
Right.
Okay. That they're talking about it. These are the people that go, why can't you shoot him in the leg?
Right.
And just don't understand the physicality that takes place when you're in an altercation. And let me tell you something. Your options, if you're dealing with a person who's violent, but say they're unarmed, you can tase them, but it might not work. They could be on PCP and unstoppable. Okay. Now, if you've banned chokeholds or submission holds, and I've been choked out, it's not fun. Believe me.
We'll do that next week too.
Yeah. I'll get you right in there.
Oh no, I'm the host. You get to be you get to be the sidekick.
It's why they call it. It's why they call it jujitsu, Sean. You flip it. No, but if you ban the use of choke and submission holds on people, do you know what you're left with? Striking,
or shoot him,
or something worse.
I'm wrestling around the ground. So if I put him in a headlock, I'm automatically off the force. I lose my qualified immunity. The bad guy can sue me and my family, and we freaking lose everything.
Yep.
Or I can shoot him and he'd be dead.
Which is worse and not really this. And the situation doesn't necessarily call for it.
But we'll have an investigation. Correct use of force. Fine. Done.
But even if the situation plays out. Guy in his underwear going crazy, he's on drugs.
Right.
Tasing doesn't work. Your options if you don't have a chokehold are gun or baton and strikes. Strikes with a baton, strikes with a fist. And believe me, they do a lot more damage than you tackling somebody and getting them 100%. In a rear naked choke and choking them to not to death, not strangling them. And this is what people who don't understand fighting or anything about that understand, but to unconsciousness or submission till they're just they can't move.
Yep.
And I don't mean can't move because they're unconscious, because you just have them locked up.
Or they just
Those are much,
or till one of your partners can get in and
right.
throw some handcuffs on.
Right, exactly. So that needs to be looked at, because it's impractical, and they're in fantasy land with that.
Right. But nevertheless, send the bill.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be. We'll see.
We'll
talk about the political stuff after.
You had another reason why I voted no.
Yeah.
For officers who knowingly submit fraudulent timesheets. And
Okay, that's fine. If a cop submits a fraudulent timesheet,
No, it's stealing.
Yeah.
Fine.
Don't steal from me. All right.
set clear standards for police use of force. Officers would also be required to intervene if they see another officer using excessive force.
We're good with both of those, and they were both in Charlie's bill.
Terrific. Yeah, if you have a cop who's going crazy and hurting somebody, and you have a cop standing by, you don't have one bad cop, you have two.
100%.
It's the cops. It's the cop's job who to pull him off or tell him not to.
Yeah, something. You need to step in. Your duty is to uphold the law.
Yeah,
and if the cop is breaking the law, then you need to stop the cop.
Exactly.
As for what was perhaps the biggest sticking point between the two versions, addressing so-called qualified immunity, the compromise went with the House version. This means officers would lose the legal protection they have now, which shields them from certain individual lawsuits only if the new commission pulls their license. The Senate version had gone much further and would have allowed lawsuits if the officer should have reasonably known that his or her conduct broke the law. Neither version would have eliminated. Of course, it's not law until both chambers pass it and the governor signs off, and already police unions are pushing for a veto. I'm joined now by State Senator Sonia.
All right, before we get into their comments on that qualified immunity, which I only learned about it this year, as did many people, which saying law enforcement is immune from civil penalties by the nature of their work and their job. Long story short.
Provided that they're acting in good conscience. I mean, you don't have qualified immunity if I'm a cop and I go out and break the law.
Right. If you commit a crime,
if I just murder you, I don't have immunity.
Right.
It's if I'm acting out my job in the commission of my job to protect and to serve, and whatever happens, I'm tackling someone, they end up, falling, hitting their head, and smacking against the gumball machine in the restaurant we're fighting in.
Yeah.
And they end up dying because it got hit just right. I have qualified immunity.
Right.
If I go in the same thing and I take him and I bang his head repeatedly against the gumball machine until he dies, I don't have qualified immunity.
Right.
So that's basically what.
Okay, that's a good clear line.
It's kind of like the Good Samaritan law for officers. If you're doing what you think you're supposed to be doing in a prudent man rule, a reasonable person would assume that this is something that a reasonable use of force, all those sort of things. And then for some reason something bad happens and you get sued, you have protection from it. Personally,
I would have a tough time thinking of a scenario where a cop wouldn't be committing a crime that would, get them thrown off the force, make them ineligible for qualified immunity anyway, yet have this commission remove them and then they'd be ineligible. Do you know what I mean? So if they're in the act of doing they're on the force and they do something so egregious that they get that the commission who has oversight of it says, no, buddy, you're gone. Bye. They would most undoubtedly have committed a crime at that point, which would make them ineligible. No, I mean, are there
racism?
Okay, all right.
Excessive use of force is somewhat,
it's gray area.
Gray. I mean, put it this way: I'm beating you. I might think it's the right use of force. You're the one person getting beating. you might think it's excessive.
It's a good point. Okay.
So I mean, I think there's a lot of gray areas in that. Chokeholds. Now you do a chokehold, you automatically lose your license.
Okay, so
I choked you out, and you now have headaches or back pain.
Right.
You can sue me and my family. Personally liable.
Right.
Because I've been removed by the commission because I did a chokehold, so it automatically loses my license.
Yeah.
Slippery.
This gets complicated.
Quick.
Real quick. Okay. All right. Let's hear from
Sonia.
Yes.
Senator Sonia.
Yes. All right.
Diaz, who was part of the 6-member committee which negotiated the compromise, and State Representative Russell Holmes, who's been advocating.
She's part of the 6-member committee.
Conference committee
that negotiated. Let's say she's
part of the four-member conference committee. Correct.
Yeah.
Police reform since long before George Floyd, sadly, became a household name. Senator, Representative, good to see you both.
Thanks for having me.
Senator, I heard on Twitter about a half hour ago a little bit of your floor speech praising the thousands of people who took to the streets demanding reform. In your estimation, did they get what they wanted out of this compromise?
Look, Jim, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. No one got everything that they wanted. I didn't get everything I wanted. Maybe Russell got everything he wanted. But there were things that protesters were asking for that are not included in this bill. You mentioned qualified immunity, strong qualified immunity reform is one of them. But that should not take away from protesters feeling that they were heard and responded to by this legislation. This is some first in the nation stuff that we are doing in this bill that is really significant, that is going to be landscape changing and culture.
Didn't you already say that only 5 other states don't have the commissions?
No, don't have the licensing.
Licensing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're finally getting around to licensing.
Right.
All right. Well, I guess maybe there's other stuff that's first in the nation.
Changing in law enforcement, most especially the post board that we're creating, and huge hat tip to Russell here for laboring in the vineyards for so many years on post reform. But this post body is going to, the police officer standards and training, to not just use the acronym, is going to combine for the first time in any state true authority, subpoena power, decertification power, proactive monitoring and oversight power, combine that with community voice at the governing table. And there are states that have done one or the other, but not both at the same time.
A lot of
Russell,
power for an appointed board.
Yeah. Well, that's the
the
commission? Is that the commission
yeah.
or is that something different?
No, it's the commission.
One and the same. So the post police officers,
Police operating safety
standards training.
Yeah, standards and training.
Standards and training. So that's the commission that they mentioned earlier.
Right.
Okay.
The 9-member.
Yeah. So they're appointed by who actually does the appointing?
I was going to say I'd have to look through the list. I should have written it down, but the governor, AG,
like some offices get different spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So not directly. This is something that
I don't get to appoint anybody.
Okay.
The police unions get to, they have for their people.
Let me ask you a question here. Your job is to make the laws for the state of Massachusetts.
That's what we're told.
This post commission is now going to be de facto. Did she say making rules or the standards?
They're making the standards.
Are the standards not laws? No? I mean, this is like...
I would say that we are giving them the authority to be making standards, which is...
Shouldn't that be...
Is that a law? Is that a standard? Do we make the standards for plumbers? No. I mean, do we make a law on what, the pitch your pipe has to be that a plumber uses, or how many hours he has to certify and everything like that? No. So I don't have a problem with that aspect, because at some point you get into the weeds and you really don't want politicians that aren't in this world creating all sorts of standards because
And I guess
it becomes way too political, and then you get lobbyists, and you get whether it's the police. You would never get anything accomplished if there's 200 freaking politicians going through. It's like, all right, this is what your uniform is going to look like, and you have to have it tucked in this particular way.
Okay, so I'm with you there. Then I agree with that. Then it gets into the minutia. But then if we circle back to the composition of the commission, it's even more of an argument that it should be 6 law enforcement, former law enforcement,
Correct.
3 civilian.
Correct.
Because the standards need to be up to snuff of what people who have a subject matter expertise.
Exactly.
Okay.
I shouldn't be saying what a neurosurgeon
Yeah.
should be doing or not doing or training or
the
anything
experts
like
in the field should. Yep.
that. I don't have any training at it.
Representative, Holmes, you have been at this longer than just about anybody in Beacon Hill. How satisfied are you with the outcome?
I'm very satisfied, Jim. I would like to now see the House pass the bill with a veto-proof majority. When you think about what's happened just over in the Senate, to only have 28 votes, I'm disappointed with that, and now I'm quite curious about what's going to happen over the next hour. And so, again, Jim, I began with you need to listen to Black people, you need to listen to Latino people, and our cornerstones of the bill are certainly in it.
But did they listen to you? The one thing that you said that I found most persuasive in the many times we talked is you said if you're stopped by a cop in the future, you want to be able to look at his or her badge, pick up your cell phone, type in that badge number, and find out job history, complaints filed against him or her. Under this post commission, will you be able to do that, Representative?
Well, this is not even part of the commission. This is just a requirement, not just if I pull you over. If I'm just walking down the street and see your name and your badge, you'll understand that, yes, I can have a public-facing database that will now allow me to know your background just like we do with every other profession. That was a must, and it was definitely in the bill.
Do we have that with every other profession?
Some professions, but I don't know about a public-facing database of all police officers and their, I guess, work history. Work history.
As a firefighter, I don't think I have it. Well,
I don't know if a firefighter. I mean, it's a different, but
not public safety, public service. I'm an EMT. I'm on. Wouldn't you want to know? How about politicians?
Well, that would be
right. Should
well,
good for the gander.
I'd want that. I'd want the politician. I don't know. I am a fan of transparency. They are public servants.
But why not have it for all public servants? Why are we only picking on the police?
If you're going to expand it, I'm for that. Yeah. I mean, look, I think this is important.
And again, I don't have any problem with this particular part of the law.
Oh, okay.
The only problem I have personally with it is we're singling out one particular class.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know of any other, and maybe I just need to do this more often, where I can, take a picture of your badge and, or your, maybe your Hackney license, maybe taxi cab drivers. I can get a decent amount of history, but I don't know if I can get I don't know if I can go into a cab and type in your name and get your entire driver's history and be like, oh, hold on a second.
There's no centralized. I mean, you can look up stuff about anybody that's in public records, but not a centralized.
But this is a one stop. I type in badge number 7212.
What would it be used? What would it be used for?
To be honest with you,
just to see if there's been complaints about a cop, and you go, hey.
I think
say, Officer Jones, looks like you've had 4 complaints against you, and then you turn your iPhone on and record the interaction, and
I don't know. I think a lot of this stuff is.
Do you want to choose your words carefully?
I understand the premise behind it.
I do too.
And I understand the want for transparency and things along those lines. I think some of these things can easily be abused. I think some of our police officers are being abused from the standpoint of you watch these people, squeaking little pigs in their face and getting in their face in front of them and spitting them and getting this close away from them and just taunting them. I really don't like that. And I think it's one of these things where I think our police officers, the ones I know, show a tremendous amount of restraint. I know a lot of cops. I'm not saying there's not a bad one out there. I've never met one. When I lived in Alabama, I met a few bad ones, but I've never met one up here. One. I'll take that back.
Well, there you go.
One I met.
They're around, but most of them are excellent.
And he's a cop in Attleboro, so there we go. I think he's, and that was like 20 years ago.
Stop there.
and what's the frick's his badge number? I'm going to find out about it.
I'm curious to what purpose it would serve. I mean, I guess it's just just to know how good
I like the transparency. I guess I worry about the going up like, and taunting the cop and having information on him and be like, he's gotten 4 complaints. One more, he gets to take a trip to Disneyland. I mean, it's we can target this particular.
I think that's a concern.
Police officer because
if you rack up enough complaints about them, you get them to that magic number, whatever it is, gets the commission, they get thrown off. And
so those sort of things that I just don't know enough about it yet to see how it works in the real world. Versus, I like it. I understand the theoretical concept. I like the transparency. I worry about having that accessible database where I can take a picture of a cop and all of a sudden I found out all sorts of information about him.
There's something about me that I agree with everything you said. There's a practicality to it. There's an aspect to it. I look at that and go, okay, I think there's some benefit there.
Right.
But for some reason, something in my gut is just telling me this is open to abuse or something like that. There's something that I'm not clear on that I think
exactly. No,
I don't know what it is.
I'm right there with you.
I don't know what I can in articulating it correctly, but there's just something that's just not sitting with me correctly here. But let's keep going. If we don't, we're almost at an hour here, but we'll try to get through the rest of this, but we can get through.
We'll stop talking.
Yeah. Well, we want to know what aspects are in the bill that we don't want in the bill. Some of which we've already discussed. If they don't cover it,
sure.
Senator, on that note, though, and I think that's important to a lot of people, this database thing. It's, to me at least, the central part of this. I was reading through some of the language, though, and it said when the regulations are being promulgated for this database, the health and safety of officers has to be considered. I assume a lot of officers are going to say, if Russell Holmes gets the information he wants for himself and his constituents, the health and safety of an officer is going to be at risk. Is that going to compromise the thing that Representative Holmes has fought for forever?
Well, look, there's 2 things that are guarding against erosion of that database that you're talking about, Jim. One is that the legal language is very clear in the bill, which hopefully with the governor's signature will become law, that there are things that have to be included, that have to be publicly available in the database, in the public-facing database, and that includes any offense that has been substantiated and that the post has acted on. So anyone who's been required to undergo retraining, has had their certification suspended or had their certification revoked, that must be in there.
How about a complaint?
If the complaint is not substantiated, it will not be public-facing.
But Jim,
what do you think of that so far? Get on, Mike.
I'll bring it over. There we go. I'll withhold my judgment yet.
Okay.
From the standpoint of...
Fair enough.
Well, one, if they've had their certification revoked, okay, they're no longer a cop.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why they're... You can still pull up their badge number, but okay, whatever. If he's, you probably should take away their badge when you revoke their certification.
Well, this is kind of the thing here. It's like, if it gets to the point kind of like what we were talking about earlier, if it gets to the point where they're in front of this post commission.
Right. And part of the problem, again, with the post commission would be a majority of it being non-law enforcement.
A lot of this commission has a lot of power.
Oh, tremendous amount of power.
This is, maybe this database is fine. By the time they get to a database, they're very, if complaints that are unsubstantiated don't go into the database, okay. Complaints that are substantiated are grounds to moving to this post commission, where they then decide on it, where they may get kicked off the force.
Right.
Then they're kicked off the force. So the idea of the database might be made relatively moot if you have this commission in place.
And let's not be delusional to think that there aren't activists out there that don't like police. They want to get rid of police. And
of course,
let's not, no matter how good the commission is, if officer number 7215 has had 27 complaints, granted, maybe none of them substantiated. Yeah, well, I think human nature is like, oh, well, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
And so maybe we'll substantiate this one. But it could be a very active campaign.
That's the kind of stuff that,
that I mean, let's face it. I mean, there are organizations, especially with technology and with the internet and everything like that, that are willing to manipulate the situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Especially nowadays with how motivated and how they're utterly
no. And listen, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. Number one being training. And when there's a bad cop, be honest with you, they always talk about the thin blue line and all this sort of stuff. Most cops I know, if there's a bad cop, they want to get rid of them. Because not only does it make them look bad, it actually makes their life harder. It's a big
it makes
pain.
their job harder.
Nobody wants to be covering for the jackass that's doing all this stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And worried about, because guess who's going to get in a shootout? Where
he's going to get them killed.
Yeah, he's going to get. I mean, they're going to be the victims, because they're going to be walking around the corner and they're going to be like, "Holy crap!" Same with like on the fire department. Nobody wants the guy on the hose line behind him that's a cokehead.
Yep.
Because I want to be 100%. I want my partner to be. I'm relying on my life with him, and I think most police are the same way. And I'm not saying. I think a lot of the thin blue line stuff gets overplayed in movies, and there's all these rogue cops that are doing all these things, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I think the majority of people that go into policing are doing it because they want to serve the public. They believe in law and order. They're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Screw up. Everybody screws up. We all make mistakes. But when we create things like this, it basically, to me, especially with the amount of debate on this and everything like that, it sends the message that we know you're bad, and we're creating something. It's not this rare exception to the rule. It's, you guys are all going to have to go through this, and you're going to all have to go through all this extra retraining, and we're watching you. And if you screw up, you're going before the commission. And if you go before this commission and we decide to decertify you, you also and your family lose your immunity, and you can be personally sued for whatever infraction you did, even if it was a verbal altercation.
Yeah, once we cross this paragon, is that the right word?
Sure. It works.
Once we do this, this will be incredibly hard to unwind if we don't get it right.
Oh.
And this commission, this post commission, seems like this is the linchpin of all of this.
Right.
And I think we both agree that it's a good idea because there needs to be some independent board that decides on this. But
Correct.
I think you and I are both adamant that the composition of that board needs to be much more vast majority, minimum 6-3 membership by law enforcement. I think that will help guide it better.
And again,
and hopefully, is that what do you know? What was the composition of Governor Baker's board?
I'd have to look it back up.
Okay, but it wasn't the inverse.
No,
Okay.
no, exactly. It might have been. I don't.
You don't want. Okay.
I mean, it was in June. I read it.
You don't.
I haven't reread it.
Okay.
Since this passed because.
Well, you know what? Regardless of what it was,
but
it should be. It should be not this.
But no matter what it is, this is another big government bureaucracy, and let's face it. You give this board a whole lot of power and a whole lot of authority. They're going to be freaking hiring secretaries and paralegals and lawyers and layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. It's going to cost us a whole lot of money. They're going to promulgate even more and more regulations because they have to justify their existence.
Right.
And I'm a small government guy.
Yeah.
And so less is more. And I think we should. I think this should be. This starting to smack to me like a common occurrence as opposed to this rare exception. And I think most policing matters can be dealt, especially like in our small towns, and by the police chief and the the deputy, and and a lot of these things done internally. And if there's a problem with someone, all right, let's you need sensitivity training or things along those lines. And I think a lot of that stuff is taking place. I know it's taking place, but all of a sudden we're going to have, instead of the police chief's going to lose that control, and it's going to get sent to this board, and it's going to be it's going down in their permanent record, and they're going to be able to be seen on their.
So
it just really seems big government, slippery slope.
On that theme, I think you're right. The problem we have is that you have an inhibited ability to fire a bad cop, which gets in the way of the job of the good cops. Right? I mean, is that? I mean,
100%.
Okay. Now you're right.
Are we going to go down the union conversation next?
We don't have enough time. But you're right. But that's where it is.
There's the conversation.
There it is.
Because it's not cops protecting cops.
Yeah.
It's the union protecting cops. Because I know of, situations, whether it's in the fire service or in any, whether it's the teachers union, any sort of thing.
Any government, public sector.
That's the union's job. If their union job isn't to ferret out, if you have tenure, you've been here a certain amount of time, your job is to protect your job.
So does this bill, as difficult as it doesn't actually, does it overrule union rules that, so say a police chief wants to fire a bad cop, and the union rules get in the way of it or make it extremely difficult currently. Would this bill, does this bill have
the rules and regulations haven't been promulgated yet.
Okay. So there you go. And you know what? I have a sneaking suspicion that it won't be. It'll just be this creation of this monster.
It is going to be a monster.
This monster of a board with regulatory oversight. All right, let's keep going on more of this.
That must be in there. Post is acted on. So anyone who's been required to undergo retraining, has had their certification suspended or had their certification revoked, that must be in there.
How about a complaint?
If the complaint is not substantiated, it will not be public facing.
But I guess
that's right.
For me, I guess the thing.
Let me also say, the other thing that I think is going to guard against what you're talking about, Jim, of the sort of, is it going to get watered down, again, is the membership of the governing board of the Post. And that is why it was something that was so important to get right in this bill, because they will have substantial regulatory power. And that's why we need to make sure that we have community voice at that table.
Representative,
What I
you want to say
was
something?
going to say, Jim, is just simply the way I read that language is something to be fair. That is, we certainly don't want the address of a police officer or something of that nature that might
Uh-huh.
put their lives in danger to be in the list. But all the things that should be relevant to the senator's point are the things that I cared about most and my constituents care about most. We
You're
want to
not
know,
worried
have you
about
had something?
complaints. You're not worried about complaints alone not being available to the public.
Right,
Representative.
because remember, I live in a profession also that people can complain any day, but you have to still have it
Okay.
proven. And so I still want to make sure that they've proven that it was actually legitimate.
You know, Senator, you said a minute ago you hope the governor signs it. I'm sure you've heard this. This is a piece of what the governor had to say today about the legislation.
We're still reviewing it, until we have a chance to actually read the thing, which, we haven't even talked to our own lawyers about it yet. I'm not going to comment beyond that to say that I'm glad that the legislature moved forward on this.
So we don't know where he's going to go. And Representative, while you said you were disappointed only 28 votes in the Senate, doing math, that is a veto-proof majority, I believe.
Right.
The House did not have a veto-proof majority when it passed the original version. Is it going to have a veto-proof majority by the end of the night?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that there's been enough arrangements done within the negotiations that it does. But let me just also just comment about just the governor. I heard Bruce Tarr commenting that there was the letter that the caucus wrote, and we should have only done the things in the letter, so those are the only thing the caucus talked about. I've been in conversation with the governor, and certainly he and I have had conversations about these rights that they were so concerned that police officers are going to have taken. But if you look at why they're going to have their rights taken, they're literally, did you, like you mentioned, did you falsify a timesheet? Did you lie under oath? Did you go and change and do something or tamper with evidence? Those are real reasons that really violate the trust of the public, and they should be held accountable.
Can we just spend a minute on qualified immunity? Because a lot of people didn't know it existed.
Before they get into that, if cops are doing that, how are they? Is the main reason why we just mentioned before that? How are they not getting fired now?
Right now they are getting fired, or they should be getting fired.
Okay.
Because none of this, dirty cops, before or after this bill, dirty cops.
Yeah.
And if you're breaking the law, you already don't have qualified immunity.
Right.
That's plain and simple. It's it's like me being an EMT and I'm on the ambulance.
Okay.
If I'm giving someone an injection and I screw up, but I'm all right. Well, I pulled it out of
Okay.
this box and it said this is medication X, and it's very different than me deliberately taking some medicine and just randomly giving it to you while you're sitting here and it caused you a heart attack.
I think I've got the distinction in what's going on here. Currently, if a cop breaks the law, there's a lot of processes that go into place. Right? Where we can get rid of that bad cop. They're setting up a scenario where if he breaks the rules, they can get rid of him.
Exactly.
And now they're making the rules
Correct.
with this commission.
Correct.
That's not how. If you want to set up rules, fine. And if they break a bunch of the rules, get rid of them. But who decides what these rules are is just the critical piece. And the senator said it before. The composition of the board. She gets it too. She gets. I mean, that's obviously she gets. She wrote the damn thing.
Yeah, because they want to have activists on the board because they're more concerned with the people. They are more concerned with the protesters than they are with the police.
And let's understand this. It's about public safety. It's about public safety.
That's not what they're about.
No. What's going to be the ramifications about public safety?
Yeah, because I've already talked to numerous police officers, and it's this sort of thing passes. I'm retiring early. The people who are going to go into policing aren't going to be the guys with the masters in criminal justice. They're going to be like, yeah, I'm okay. we're gonna end up actually dumbing down our police force. We're gonna end up with less professional police officers and more people because the best and brightest aren't going to want to go into policing if they make a mistake or there's some rule that they don't know about it, or that the rule has changed or whatever, or they got a group of activists that are against them for whatever reason. Who would go into that profession? And guess what? You might also get shot.
Yeah.
I mean, all these wonderful things and all this other BS that you're going to have to deal with as a police officer, and you have to worry about getting shot, run over, hit on the highway, ambushed. They're freaking ambushing in cops now.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things, spit on, called a racist, filmed, and things taken out of context over and over and over again for
no.
And they're not making $400,000 a year.
This is a play to the activist base,
100%
at the expense of public safety.
Yep.
And
careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because in the end, the public's going to be the one that suffers, because we're going to have poorer people, and not poor monetarily, poorer quality people.
Yeah.
Willing to go into public safety and into the police force, because anyone with a brain's not going to do it.
Yep. Cops who break the law should be punished accordingly, and are being, and you may not think
cops who break the law should be punished extra.
Yeah. But if you have cops who break the rules and you decide what the rules are and activists decide what the rules are, we're done here. We're done.
100%.
And this is going to, and by the way, in case you think this is just going to be in their neighborhood or the city of Boston, you're in the suburbs, this is statewide.
Right.
This is statewide, and it's going to affect all of us. So call your representative and tell them to vote no.
Well, we already voted.
Well, when it gets vetoed, when the veto hopefully comes, because
and they were asking about the veto majority. They were wrong, saying that they were one shy in the Senate. They were actually two shy in the Senate. The fact that they don't know that, it's a little surprising, but whatever. And we actually went up in the House. We had 66 in the first version. We had 67 in this current version that voted no. So that means
the more we talk about this, I think the more it'll tick up a little bit.
Right.
All right. Let's get into we're at hour and 15, but we can wrap it up with qualified immunity. I mean,
we might not go into the other. We might have we'll lose the bureau clock segment for this evening.
Well, it'll be a quick one. I'll show you.
You were candid about it, Senator. A minute ago, the weaker version, the House version, was chosen. At the other extreme, there are people like Senators Markey and Warren and D.A. Rollins and Congresswoman Presley who wanted it eliminated. Did you both support elimination of qualified immunity at the beginning of this process? Senator, starting with you.
I did. It was not.
Why is it not in the law, in the bill?
Look, making compromises is in the very nature and essence of a conference committee process. If I'd had it to write myself, we would have kept the stronger qualified immunity reform in. But in order to get a bill out and done and into law by the end of this session that includes really meaningful other things, it was a compromise that we needed to make.
Representative, are you content with, were you in favor of eliminating qualified immunity? Are you content with the state of affairs in the bill on that?
So to your point, Jim, before this began, I had never heard the words qualified immunity put together. And so that was my point when I've had these conversations with you in the past. So I'm satisfied that we at least landed on making a change and now studying and see what makes sense. I can tell you we heard many, many ideas, but now let's spend the next couple of months trying to figure out what is the right next step.
So
let me
stop for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that we, as the Republicans on this, came to an agreement with is we were like, listen, we're not saying we shouldn't look at qualified immunity. Let's create a study, an actual appointed group, and I think it had to be out like by next June. So like a 6-month-long study to actually investigate qualified immunity, what's going on in the other parts of the country, what's the best version. If there's things that need to be tweaked in it, let's tweak it and everything along those lines. That was the agreement we had, or we thought we had. They did create the study, but at the same time, they put in the elimination of qualified immunity. And I'm like, so we're going to study it to determine what we're going to do with it. But in the meantime, we're going to eliminate it in these circumstances. And so we're like, no, the study was to determine, and we weren't talking a 10-year study, 6 months. And let's figure out, that way we can make our decision and move forward based on actual sound empirical data.
Cool.
And this is one of those things.
Yes.
That Bruce and Tim didn't find out about till I think it was
already out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't get a chance to look at it. I think I talked to Tim probably like at 11 o'clock the following morning, and he was still been going through it. He had been up pretty much all night long going through it, and did the yeoman's share of work for those of us in the house, and he's like, he goes, yeah, it's bizarre. Here it is. And it's eliminated in the next paragraph.
So wait, it is eliminated. They're in that clip. They're talking about how it's not they didn't get what they wanted, which was to eliminate.
Well, they wanted to completely eliminate it.
What is this one? What is this?
This one, it eliminates it based on if the commission determines that you are guilty. They wanted to just qualified immunity not to exist.
Okay.
So
this is one of those
even if you were doing everything right by the book and everything like that, and you made a mistake, no immunity, you get sued.
Yeah.
And then you're really,
well, again, if you just broke their rules,
but let's say you're doing everything right, and there's a shootout, and there's a bad guy shooting at you, and you shoot back, and whatever, your bullet ricochets and hits somebody. Horrible tragedy. Or even hits the bad guy, and the family says, well, he wasn't that bad after all.
He
wasn't that bad. He wasn't actually shooting at you. You're lying. And jury of the peers, they sue. The cop can be sued and his family personally.
Well, in this scenario, if they're removed by the board, this post
in this
board,
video, okay. But if you lose all of qualified immunity,
they could
even if you did nothing wrong, you end up getting sued.
Yeah.
And guess what? There's got to be an ambulance chaser attorney out there somewhere.
Yeah, forget about it.
Did you get pulled over by the police?
Yeah.
Did he violate your civil rights?
He'll sue you for anything. Yeah.
Did he look at you funny? Call 1-800-SUE the cop. I mean,
it's going to happen.
And think about, even if you win, you lose.
Who's going to pay for it?
Cop's going to pay. Have her attorney on retainer for $5,000 a week. Yeah. I was going to say, be good for my wife, but besides that, it's not going to be good for the. No one is going to remain in policing.
No, they'll have to quit immediately. They'll have to. Why would you risk it?
You would be an idiot not to.
Yeah. You couldn't exist in that career knowing the next day you could go out, make a standard arrest, have it actually go without problem, and still get sued anyway.
Either that, or you stay on the job and you do nothing.
Which is what you're seeing. For other reasons in places like New York City, and
Yep. But it's like, why would I give someone a ticket? They might sue me.
Right. All right. I think wrapping it up with qualified immunity is probably the way to go. I mean, we can listen to the rest of it.
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Yeah, look, this is not our jocular, normally having fun kind of episode, but I think it's important that we talk about it because this is a really important issue. Right. And nobody, you know what, even though we're at an hour and 23, it's fine. Because you know what, this is the kind of topic you actually need to sink your teeth into.
We could easily go 3 hours on this. I think, so we don't lose track. What I think the governor should do, Charlie, Governor Baker, I'll be respectful. And what I hope he will do is, now that it's passed the House and the Senate, it'll go to his desk, and there's a couple things he can do. He can sign it, goes into law. As an aside, very weird from the standpoint of 67 of us voted against it.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, they did an emergency preamble, which means instead of it going in place in normal due course, it goes into effect immediately upon the signature of the governor, which requires 2/3.
2/3 of both houses? Or
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
But only 31 of us, so basically just the Republicans, voted against it going into effect immediately. So 36 Democrats were against the bill altogether. But if the governor signs it, we want it to go into effect today. I mean, you're like, I'm like, do you not understand what the emergency obviously they did not understand, or they weren't paying attention, or they didn't really care, because they said, this bill is so bad, we are against it. But if it does go into effect, we want it to effect immediately and not give anybody any time to prepare. Well, it's just one of these things you're just like,
well, what's crazy about this, first of all, I think, in my opinion, you can listen, I don't know, this is my opinion, you should veto it as it is now.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll give you I'll give you my opinion in a second. I don't think you should veto it.
All right. Qualified immunity needs to be discussed way more at length, and can be discussed and talked about and reformed in a separate bill. There's nothing stopping anybody from doing it that way, right? Why not? It's 100%. Yeah. Should we take the time, public hearing, let's talk about it, let's hear from the cops, let's come to something
100%
that gets to what I think most of the citizens of Massachusetts want. I think we can get there. But if we're going in the direction of this commission, the makeup of it seems to be the critical piece of this thing. So I 6-3, 6 civilians to 3 law enforcement is just unacceptable. Right. And I mean, if that can be changed prior to signature, and qualified immunity can be changed prior to signature, and maybe even consider the chokeholds and training and all that stuff, maybe that's part of the post-commission thing, then I guess sign it. I'm not sure of the actual procedures that you go through.
That's what I was going through.
Okay.
See, you keep interrupting.
I'm sorry.
You didn't let me finish. So he can sign it, becomes law immediately. He can veto it. Then it goes back to the House. See if we sustain his veto or override his veto, and then it goes to the Senate. Same thing. We override the veto, it becomes law. Or he can send it back with an amendment. What I want him to do, if he's listening at home, strike the entire bill, put the original bill, his original bill, that had full support by the police unions and the police officers, had the full support of the Black and Latino caucus, covered 90% of everything in here, only 17 pages long. Good start. Because I think it's substantial. I think it's important that we do something. I think this is an important enough issue. I think having licensing for the police and having additional standards and additional training, I think that is an important message that us as a legislature needs to be putting out there to the public, because I think there is a real concern, and whether it's perceived or legitimate doesn't matter. I think it is legitimate, though. I think more training is always better. So it covers all those big areas. Send it back with that as an amendment. I know in the House we would vote for it. I think we would probably vote. I think it would pass unanimously. As opposed to,
well, there'd be people that would didn't think it didn't go far enough that would vote against it. But
it would pass.
Yeah,
and then we could be done. And then, do your point, move on. If there's additional things, let's get. That's the frustrating thing about all of this. We could have had 80% of this done back in June. Addressed real issues. We could have been moving forward. We could have had the training already in place and rolling. And we could have had some of the oversight already in place. We could have had the certification already being done. But instead, we have to freaking have the, perfect be the enemy of the good and just do all this nonsense. And there's a decent chance that if that doesn't happen, if that's not the option, he vetoes it. It goes back to the House. We sustain the veto. All of it gets away. And then
you're right back at square one.
We're starting all over.
No,
in the next session, which I think sends a bad message to the public, that they think then they're like, oh, the Republicans and these, Democrats and Charlie Baker were against police reform. We're not against police reform.
Well, that'll be the headline. So yeah,
I know,
yeah.
but that's there's the negative, and unfortunately, the public isn't going to be listening to the show. The masses, we're working on it. Share it to all your friends. But the 10-second headline.
Yeah.
Oh, the governor vetoes actual police reform, and the battle cry is going to be like, oh, they don't care about rogue cops and things like that. Absolutely not true. So I hope he amends it, puts something in that everybody already agrees on, and then let's take everything else piece by piece. Like you said, let's actually have hearings. Let's have the stakeholders come in. We want to talk about qualified immunity. Let's listen to everybody and come to, that's what legislation is supposed to be. We're supposed to, that's what democracy is about. It's not always easy, but you want to let everybody's viewpoint be heard, not just Russell and Sonia. You really want to have everybody, especially the people this affects, where it's their freaking job.
I was speaking to more of the content of the legislation when I interrupted before. So I think, I don't know the procedural, but you're right. I think both politically and, practically,
right.
That would be the way to go, because I think if he has to veto it and it goes down and it gets or actually gets sustained, that creates a very bad political situation.
And then we're dragging it on another. Yeah, it's probably another year by the time it goes back and forth. There'll be 2 additional bills that'll be even more grandiose with thousands of amendments, and then another conference committee, and we're going to waste another year when everyone is in agreement on the 10 big issues.
Yep.
Let's get the 10 ones that we're already all in agreement on done.
And we can tackle, tackle the tough stuff.
11, 12, 13, 14.
Yeah. There's no reason why we can't do individual bills.
Right.
And they don't have to be at the stroke of midnight with less than 24 hours to read. Just stop it.
Exactly.
Just stop it. Come on. Stop it. All right. Let's end with the stupidest 2 minutes of your day.
Oh, I love the stupidest 2 minutes of my day. Invest in a greener tomorrow. Is that it? No. Oh, is this TikTok?
Yep. Stupidest 17 seconds of your day. This is our Attorney General, Maura Healey.
Did she move her lips?
I don't even know.
Put that back on again. I don't think.
Yep.
So go vote.
That was out of sync. It's still stupid. All right, I don't want to hear that again. Oh God, they're just
wow.
They're just dorks. They're just dorks.
I wonder.
Oh God. There are thousands of unemployment.
Can we make commentary on what's going on with the cranberry juice?
No. Did you see? There was a meme. There was a guy who became famous overnight. He was a skateboarder out in California doing this song. Skateboarding. It was like a cool video, and he's drinking Ocean Spray cranberry juice. Oh, okay. So suddenly, they bought him a car. We got millions of views. Oh, okay. It was a whole thing. It was cool.
I don't have TikTok.
It was cool for a minute.
I don't let the Chinese.
Yeah, they invade your phone. It was cool.
I'm sure they're already in there, but I'm not gonna. I at least want to do my part.
It was cool for a minute, and of course, leave it to our Attorney General to beat it to death. Anyway.
Oh, it's goodbye music.
Goodbye music. You have been watching the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. I am Jeff Simone. Oh. He is pulling on the cords of the computer. He's Sean Dooley.
I'm trying to go for the camera again.
Yeah, don't hit it. Don't hit it. All right, almost.
Almost.
Please share this with your friends. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on YouTube. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as always, and we hope you will join us next time for an in-depth evaluation of what's going on in our wonderful Commonwealth. Good night.
Good night.